In the vibrant city of Kumasi, Ghana, where tradition and modernity collide, a girl's life is about to take a dramatic turn. Adwoa, who is a 19-year-old teenager filled with life, has really been through a lot. She has lived a life marked by hardships and poverty. Being the only child of a struggling mother was really not of any good because they lived a life of predicaments. Adwoa's reckless father had abandoned them years ago, leaving her to take care of her ailing mother. Adwoa's mother has been bedridden for 4 years as she suffers from paralysis that has refused to be cured. Her world crumbles each and every day as she is being wrecked by the deadly illness that befell her. She had been to so many places seeking to get help. The hospitals couldn't provide an adequate information about the cause of the illness, while some of the diviners says it's a spiritual attack. But still, they can't bring forth solution. Meanwhile, most of the pastors keep asking for tithes and offerings, then do series of prayers and fasting, but still to no avail. The few family and friends they have had also tried for Adwoa and her mother in the little way they could. Everything seemed to be designed to get out of hand, no matter how they try. At 16, Adwoa had to drop out of school as the burden was too much for her to handle. She was too young to face the kind of hardships that life threw at her. She dropped out of school to work menial jobs, and she was barely earning enough to feed herself and her sick mother as hospital bills piled high and debt collectors knocked on their door daily. Adwoa's desperation grew as her mother's condition worsened. Tears and sorrow had become her best friend. Her family and friends had also distanced themselves from her and the sick mother as they couldn't keep up with the unending demands. The only person that gives her the courage to push is an old woman, Mrs. Kwame, a distant neighbor who doesn't hesitate to give Adwoa sika to support her mother's treatment. One day, Adwoa headed down to the block industry where she works to collect her pay for the days she had worked. So on getting there, she was refused payment by her supervisor, and this resulted to an altercation between she and her supervisor. She had planned to use the money to get some foodstuffs at home. She was denied payment and was told to come back the next day for clarifications. Adwoa was so pissed at the whole situation. Immediately, she stormed out of the block industry trying to find her way back home. Then a car pulled up to her. Wind down, and behold, he was Mr. Owusu. Mr. Owusu was a well-known philanthropist in the society. He had a massive construction going on in his site and needed to be present at the block industry himself for the massive purchase. So he clearly witnessed the commotion that happened out there between Adwoa and the supervisor. That also invited her over to his car and decided to engage her in a conversation on why a young pretty girl like her works in a block industry and why on earth would she even see that as an option. Adwoa was skeptical about opening up, but since he's a renowned philanthropist, she felt that relating her predicaments to him is not going to be a bad idea. She told Mr. Owusu everything he needed to know about herself and her sick mother. At the end of her story, he was really touched and moved by her sad story. He gave her his complimentary card and told her to call him whenever she needs him. He also gave her some money to do the house runs and also get some groceries and drugs for her mother. Adwoa's happiness knew no bounds. She possibly thanked Mr. Owusu a million times as she promised to reach out to him as soon as possible. Few weeks later, Adwoa reached out to Mr. Owusu to thank him for the help he rendered her the other day. And he clearly told her that she's free to visit his office at any time she wants. So one fateful night, Adwoa's mother had a serious panic attack that got her rushed to the hospital with immediate effect. The doctors and nurses did all their best to keep her heartbeat stable, as she was automatically placed on a life support machine. Adwoa was left helpless and confused, thinking, where on earth am I going to get such huge amount of money? God knows that she can't raise up such amount in a year. And she's been given an ultimatum of 48 hours to come up with a total sum of 40,000 Ghana cedis. Adwoa had no choice than to visit Mr. Owusu's office. Then at this point, she was practically desperate to do anything so her mother could leave. She couldn't imagine herself in this world without her mother. On getting there, Mr. Owusu welcomed her with an open arms as Adwoa breaks down, telling him how she has 48 hours to save her mother's life. She vowed to him that she's ready to work for him and stay loyal if he could help her with the amount needed to commence treatment for her mother. Mr. Owusu smiled mischievously as he listened to her pouring out her mind to him. As she was done, Mr. Owusu asked her, Adwoa, do you know I can't pay up that hospital bill right now without you working for me? Adwoa looked at him with a surprising expression as he goes on and on. At the end of the conversation, Mr. Owusu told her that the only thing that she needs to do if she truly wants her mother to live is to get laid. Adwoa was perplexed by the sound of that. She is still a virgin and has no clue of what sex was all about. Mr. Owusu gave her a hotel location and the time where they could meet in case she changes her mind. Immediately, she stormed out of the office and headed straight to Mrs. Kwame's home to seek some advice. Who would have thought that Mr. Owusu could have a reputation of exploiting young women? On getting there, Mrs. Kwame simply told her to go for what her mind wants, since it has to do with her mother's life. At the end of the day, she had to go back to her vomit as time was ticking and she needed to act fast. She made it to the hotel and was given access to the room, as Mr. Owusu had already booked the room down. He arrived and had no mercy on her fragile body, as he pounced on her like a hungry lion. That particular event left Adwoa shattered and lost, but the good thing is that her mother was going to leave. At the end of the day, Mr. Owusu handed over the exact amount she asked for. Then she immediately dragged herself out of the hotel and made her way back to the hospital. On getting there, she quickly made payments and her mother started receiving treatments immediately. Lo and behold, she was responding to treatments, which made Adwoa so happy and alive. But a few weeks later, Adwoa's mother kicked the bucket, leaving Adwoa shattered as her world crumbles with guilt and shame. She couldn't contain the fact that all her sacrifices were in vain. Plus, she had started noticing some changes in her body ever since the time she had that encounter with Mr. Owusu. Her brain hurt so much, while she also encounters frequent loss of memory. All through the mourning period, down to the day her mother was buried, Mrs. Kwame was there for her. Few days after her mother had been laid to rest, Mrs. Kwame decided to confront Adwoa on how she's been behaving strangely like a mad person, and after some few interrogations, she opened up to Mrs. Kwame that she has been having strange dreams, loss of memory, and some other strange occurrence. Mrs. Kwame made some underground findings, and with the information she gathered, it was said that Mr. Owusu is a big-time ritualist that hides his evil deeds under the umbrella of being a philanthropist. Unfortunately, Mrs. Kwame couldn't call him out because there was no proof that would back up her claims. Everyone knows that the poor has no say in the society, so all she could do was to lay low. She was devastated because nobody could be of help to Adwoa, and her situation keeps getting worse day by day. Adwoa has started looking very lean and shabby. Everyone thought she was being affected by the loss of her mother. As days rose into weeks, her neighbors, family, and friends started keeping her at arm's length because of how fast she's turning into something else. The world seemed to be ending on her. Adwoa couldn't even feel herself again because something huge is missing in her. Mrs. Kwame had really tried her best in putting Adwoa together. She bathes her, feeds her, and makes sure she's not seen outside because of her bad state. But when the matter started getting out of hands, Mrs. Kwame started looking for an external help. Adwoa has started being a little bit aggressive and couldn't be controlled by Mrs. Kwame alone. So she bundled Adwoa out of her house and took her straight to a prayer house. By the grace of God, she was revived and she was sent to a rehabilitation center. Adwoa's story is quite sad. It serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Unfortunately, life has no manual, and the universe's balance sheet is overdue for an update. That's so sad.